Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the view from the opposition. This week it comes from a friend of the show, Luke Seychell, podcaster, but more importantly, a Crystal Palace fan. And if you're watching this, ladies and gentlemen, which of course you are because you've tuned into it, what a stupid thing to say. Of course you're watching it, listening to it as well. Please like it, please share it, because Luke has moved heaven and earth to get on to today's show. So show your appreciation by sharing it across every platform you've got, across your family networks. That'd be much appreciated. Luke, welcome back to the show. How are you keeping? Are you well?
Yeah, cheers for having me back on. I'm all good. I'm nervous, but I think both sets of fans will be ahead of this game.
Oh, mate, if you'd come to me last week, if you were the game Newcastle United were playing last weekend, I was flying high. I was thinking, I would have thought, as I did with the West Ham game, it's a nailed on 3 points. Not arrogance, just because that's the way it looks on the table, form and what have you. But this is Newcastle United we're talking about, and they always find a way to let you down and kind of break your heart. And they did that on Monday against West Ham. So now I'm coming into this game, not necessarily fearing it, but obviously not on a high, just kind of scratching my head thinking, what Newcastle United are going to turn up, because I have no idea. As my colleague John said on yesterday's podcast, they're a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde team. And so you don't know which Newcastle United team are going to turn up. Is it going to be the free-flowing, clinical Newcastle United that we haven't seen too much of this season, but you know, they've beaten the likes of Arsenal, so they can do it when called upon? Or is it going to be the side we'll see against West Ham? Who knows? The key question to answering that question may be, Luke, how will Crystal Palace play on Saturday at Selhurst Park? Because I do feel like for Newcastle United to get a victory, Palace have to play it a certain way. And my fear is the answer you're going to give me is not the answer I want to hear.
I'm really not sure. Now, just going into this game briefly, I feel like both teams are kind of teams at the moment where counter-attack may favour them a little bit more than the possession base, just in terms of some of like an away game for Newcastle. You know, you want the other team to take the front foot. Newcastle have got some very fast players, and Palace are the same. We proved that against Villa last week. Both our goals were from counter-attacks. But at home, you know, the way we took Spurs was we did take on the front foot a little bit, as we tried to at the start. You know, we tried to be possession based with high pressing. You know, the high pressing is going to be the most important bit. We definitely will see that. I just don't know how much of the ball Palace will want to see early doors. It's a really weird one in my head because Palace have been so hit and miss this season. You know, performances against the bigger sides have sometimes looked better, and that has been when, you know, the other side takes that more possession. So yeah, I think you'll see the intensity, you'll see the high pressing. You know, we had a really good result against Villa. So yeah, I'm trying to explain it. I'm being very vague. It's just because I genuinely don't know how we're going to set up. Players may be returning all that, and that will make a big difference. But I will say high pressing will definitely be there.
Well, it's really interesting because I had a little look at the possession stats ahead of talking to you, and it does look at home that Palace aren't too dominating on the ball. You know, they don't mind perhaps sitting back. I mean, that's just me looking at the possession stats. And you mentioned there the win over Spurs, where they had just 33.6% possession in that 1-0 win. And the fear is, from my point of view and from Newcastle United fans' point of view, is that if Palace sit back and invite Newcastle United on, as we've seen in recent games, Newcastle United just do not know what to do. You know, West Ham got the first goal in the game. Newcastle United were very good for kind of 10, 15 minutes or so. But after West Ham got the goal, they just sat back and just said to Newcastle, come on, then come in and lock us. And Newcastle United couldn't do that. And that's been the case for not just this season, but, you know, last season as well, where teams, if they sit back and just absorb Newcastle and say, you're going to have to bring the game to us, Newcastle are not comfortable doing it. And looking again at the stats, that's something that Palace might try on Saturday.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So when I'm saying that high pressing against Spurs, you're exactly right. We didn't hold lots of the ball, but our goal actually came from Spurs passing it around the back. We pressed them, we turned it on immediately, just out of nowhere, just because we saw that little bit of possession they were passing it around. Then that's when we turn on the high press, you know, and that's when we try and look. So we will look for them mistakes. But fully agree with everything you said there. It does look like we do want to give the other team more of the ball because we want them to make mistakes more, or we want to get that counter attack. Villa, before us, they conceded a counter-attack goal from a corner to Liverpool, and then the exact same happened against us where we capitalised on that. So yeah, you're definitely right in what you're thinking. And yeah, West Ham for Newcastle was very interesting because I think there was a lot of excitement from Newcastle fans going into that after the couple of results they've had. But then it went back to what we've seen kind of prior to that kind of good run you've had. So maybe the away game may suit Newcastle a little bit, where you don't have all that fan pressure on you. Sometimes that may work, mentality wise. But yeah, it's a tricky one to go to after losing a home game to West Ham, isn't it?
Wishful thinking that it does kind of play in their favour, but I just don't think it will. I'm not necessarily saying they're going to lose on Saturday. I've gone for a draw, but there's the issue of kind of going to London. The record in London isn't great. Their away form's still not where it should be if you're going to be an established top six side. And then you just got what I do feel is a proper mindset issue of when they go up against teams they should be beating. And again, not arrogance. They should have beat West Ham because on paper, everything led you to that. Yes, West Ham got a good squad, but form, the feeling around the club, etc., etc. That's why Newcastle United should have won on Saturday, on Monday night gone. And they should, in theory, win this game as well. Crystal Palace, one win all season. They're looking a little bit disjointed, and you can tell me more about that in a moment. But on paper, this is a game Newcastle United should be winning, especially if they want to be in that top six. But I don't know. I'm not feeling overly confident about it. And I guess from Palace's point of view, from Glasnow's point of view, you'll be looking at what happened on Monday night at St James's Park and thinking, okay, we can really get at them here. This is an opportunity for us to get only the second win of the season.
Yeah, definitely. And it's kind of funny hearing both our views as well, because I think both of us going into this slightly pessimistic, just because based on the form and that of the players lately. But yeah, it will be interesting if we can, phase you in that first 15 minutes or something. That could definitely add on to all them kind of mentality issues that you're talking about for sure. And yeah, when we've got one win this season, there will be a bit of nerves from us as well. So it's such a weird game to go into, because I think you're right as well. Newcastle should be looking at this like they want to battle for Europe. They brought these owners in for a reason to try and do that. Yes, there's financial rules in the way as well, but you're thinking these are the games you've got to attack. But when that slight dip of form happens, it does just worry you, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And it's really weird because we've got Liverpool coming up on Wednesday evening. And I'm actually a little bit more confident, as strange as it sounds, for that game, because Newcastle United under Eddie Howe, they just seem to have no issue finding the motivation to go up against these top sides. Okay, Liverpool's one of the teams they haven't managed to beat. I think he has got just a horrendous record against them. But we saw last season they were leading with 10 minutes to go. Liverpool were down to 10 men. They should have won at St James's Park. So when these big teams come to St James's Park, or even when Newcastle go to the big grounds, they tend to do okay. They might not win the game, but they tend to really put in a performance. But we've seen this season against Everton, against Bournemouth, against Fulham. I know those two are doing better than expected, but they've really struggled against teams you expect them to beat. So you throw Palace into that mix, and I am a little bit more confident about Wednesday than I am Saturday. And I can't quite believe I'm saying that. We've mentioned there kind of the way Palace may approach the game. And if they are just sitting back and looking to hit Newcastle on the counter, how do the fans on the terraces take to that? Because you would assume kind of any team at home, unless you're going up against maybe the top two or three, would try and dominate the ball a bit more. But as we've said there, it's very likely that they won't do. So how do the fans react to that?
Yeah, again, I think it depends sometimes of where you are in the season or how the teams are performing in that in other games. But I think at the moment there is the understanding from the Palace fan base that when it clicks, and if that means less possession, that's fine, because actually the football we are playing in possession isn't just lump it up the pitch. There is a style there that we can see, even though there's less possession. And people may look at this like Palace 19th in the league, their fans are going to turn on them quick. But I actually think we can see the signs are there. And I think the moans would be more to those above the owners than the actual manager and the style. And obviously we have had a lot of injuries. So I do actually think if we're lacking possession, as long as there's chances coming and it's not, you could just see the players are switching off type vibe, then I think we'll still back them. I think we know the importance of this game. And I think that's where both Newcastle and Palace actually have very decent fan bases in that aspect. They will, when they're at home, they can really, really back the two sides and be the 12th man. And I think, as I said, unless it's stupid, unless it's really, really bad, then you'll be seeing them back the boys, I hope anyways.
Yeah, it's a fantastic ground to visit. The fans are well known for getting behind their team, and you chuck in Newcastle's travelling away support. It really makes for a fantastic afternoon on Saturday. What has happened this season at Palace? Because a lot of people were tipping them to break into that top 10 after a fantastic end to last season. Obviously, Newcastle United lost to Palace down at Selhurst Park in the April 2-0. Both teams, I think, had won both games coming into that game. And obviously, still a little bit of a difference in where they were in the league. That win, if my mind serves me correctly, kept secured Palace's status in the Premier League. But again, we were going into that game as Newcastle fans thinking, okay, we should be doing all right here. And they lost 2-0. I think they had one shot on target. Palace were absolutely brilliant. Mateta amongst the goals. And then, as we say, finished the season really strongly. Yes, you lost Michael Olise, but you kept hold of your other big name players. And it hasn't gone the way many expected.
Yeah, so I'll try and not spend half an hour on this because I could dive into this for ages. But I think when deadline day finished, Palace, I love doing their business late. So we were having until deadline day. Anderson left, there was all the rumours about Guehi, Elise left. Didn't actually really replace these sort of players till deadline day or that last week. So you're already, as a club, setting yourself back 4 games. We played West Ham. We had to play Klein again at centre back. Richards. It was very dysfunctional. So for me, I don't want to say a lot of it, but the owners, this is kind of partially to blame. I think that complacency kicked in where they thought, doesn't matter if we've lost Elise, we still want to get the best money deals, the budget ones, the players come available later in the transfer window, and we'll wait for that. But Glasner's a manager who's proven he needs time. He needs a full season with the 11 he's playing. I do also think as well, the Euros came into it. We had 4 players, not starting, just Guehi starting, but coming back to pre-season late. We had 2 Colombia players in the final as well. So you've got 6 players dealing with that heartbreak. Coming to pre-season a week and a half before the season starts, and Mateta playing in the Olympics until the week before Brentford. So we had about 7 of our key players already kind of not fully up to Premier League match fitness when the season starts. So that comes in, that kind of unsettles you. And then, as I said, some of the signings, your momentum changes, and then your players lose morale a little bit. Then come into it, just injuries like the last home game we had against Fulham. When we saw the squad, everyone just saw that was a Fulham loss because I generally think our whole bench, apart from one, was academy players or 2. And we had to start an academy player in midfield for his debut, So there has been injury issues in that, combined with maybe a few times, I think the Forest game Glasner got wrong. So if you just add all them things together, you can just see where we've been wrong. And hopefully when January comes along, we will get that Elise replacement, because you can't sign a striker in Nketiah and expect him to do what Elise does. So that's a big issue as well. So them little things coming into it. And I think the level of the teams around us, Brighton and West Ham, I know West Ham aren't doing well, but spending like 150 million and that. Still got the Newcastle battling up above us and stuff like that. So all that combined just saw us have this really, really bad start. But the performances are turning around. I think it's 1 loss in 5 games for us in all competitions, and that was the Fulham one. So it's turning around, and just hopefully when all our players are back fit, we can see clicking again. We can battle for top half.
It's really interesting because when I did the view from the opposition for the West Ham game, we had a chap on called Tom, and all our viewers and listeners absolutely loved it because he went on this big, massive rant about what's gone wrong for West Ham, as you've kind of just done there for Crystal Palace, a little less shouty. But you've interestingly not mentioned the manager. Now, he was going in on Lopetegui, calling him his tactics idiotic and all this. He was really going on hard in the manager, on the manager. Where you've not mentioned the boss there. So that suggests that he's got your backing and the fans backing as well.
He's got most of the fans backing. There's always going to be some that are just immediately, the manager takes sole blame. But for me, you saw Brighton and West Ham's new managers, in their first transfer window get full backing. For Palace again, for me, I think our net spend we maybe lost about 5 mil in total if you added all the transfers and sales we made. I just don't think you can do that as a club if you want to push on. And when I saw the transfer window end, first thing I said was battle for 10th and a cup run would be my aim, because you can't be, no matter how good you end in the season, you can't be not losing a little bit of money in the transfer window to do that. And yeah, as I said, Glasner can be stubborn. He will fully stick to the same formation no matter the injuries, and we've seen that. And that's why I kind of highlight the Forest game. I think that maybe that, but all managers are stubborn with their formations now. But yeah, for me, we saw a glimpse of what he can do given that time. And I just think for clubs like Palace, if you're just constantly sacking them the moment it goes wrong, you're never going to get anywhere. So I think you just got to give it a go. And I'd like to think we'll stay up. And unless it's really bad, come April, we're still in the battle, then yeah, you might have to consider him. But for now, there's just no point rushing and pulling the trigger.
I mean, that's really interesting. You mentioned there as well the summer transfer window and the budget. Of course, Mark Guehi was strongly linked to Newcastle United. A couple of bids went in for different amounts, depending on who you believe, depending on which side you believe. But Newcastle's interest is very real. It remains very real. First off, the fact that we know that Newcastle United put in a bid of at least £60 million for Mark Guehi, and Steve Parish, corner, the man who seems to be making all decisions, turned that down. Has that been a well-received decision? Does everyone support that, or do some look at it and think, well, his contract's running down? Yes, he's a brilliant player. Yes, he's our captain. But £60 million can go out and potentially buy you maybe 2 or 3 players over the next 5 years, sort of thing.
Yeah, of course. It obviously depends how that 60 mil comes. If that was we're getting 50 mil that straight away, you'd love that as a club. But also, I am also of the aspect where do fans argue a bit too much about finances for a club like Palace? We're not going to be able to replace an England international with an England international. So for me, I'm thinking we've got another season with him. At the time, I thought if we're declining this, that means we want to really try and push on. But then transfer window came, we didn't really get the players. If you could have kept him for that season and kind of done really well with him, then it would have been worth the gamble. Some fans are still, it's always going to be mixed. Some fans immediately, they're like, take that money. That's a lot of money straight away. But for me, it's also like Newcastle are doing really well. They got Champions League. They're not consistently in Europe. Is Guehi going to run contract down himself a little bit? Because I think if it just happens, doesn't it, with players? If they want more options, Newcastle would have been a really good fit for him. I still think they would be a good fit for him. I think they need a centre back in their team as well, and he'd do really well. But yeah, we're not going to get as much as him. I'm fully accepting that in my head. I'm just embracing that we've still got a player of his quality in our starting 11. And I was terrified to talk about this bit on the segment because I know it's a very much heated thing. We're going to want more money than Newcastle are going to want to pay. But Steve Parish is known for being very, very annoying for opposition clubs. It's happened with Zaha over the years. Will he regret it? Well, time will only tell, will it? Won't it? We lost Zaha on a free in the end, and that was a huge loss to losing the free, no matter how long you kept him. So it'll be really interesting to see how the next 6 months play out.
Because I really thought he would sign a new deal. I thought if Parish has pushed that hard to keep him at the club, then he must be confident of getting him to sign a new deal with a release clause in where, there's no negotiation needed because there's £100 million release clause in, which some people might laugh at. But in England, a national captain of the club, it's not, out of the realms of possibility. That's what a player like him will cost you. But obviously he hasn't signed that new deal. So what's going on there? Because at the moment that does play into Newcastle's hands. I mean, they could come in January and tempt them with another 50, 60 million pound bid, and all of a sudden, you've lost 6 months on his contract, so his value's not really holding out.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting because Parish is so open in the summer with the media, which that's going to be hit and miss with the fan base, isn't it, as well? Is he opening, like he said something like he's shocked no one's come in for Eze because Eze had a big release or had a cheaper release clause, I think, until June or something. So there's these little things where, he's trying to get that money. He's not the richest man in the world, and he's definitely not the richest in the Premier League. But I think what happened was Fulham came in for Anderson, 29-year-old. He wanted 100k a week. We weren't willing to offer that. Get like 30 odd mil for him. And that's a crazy price for a club like Palace. No matter the quality of Anderson, you can't say no to that, And then you're looking, can you actually lose Anderson and gain a summer window? And I think at the end, it came to which club's going to meet Steve Parish's valuation first. And it was Fulham. And I don't think any Palace fans saw Mark Guehi sign a new deal. I don't think any of us thought just because he's rejected it, he'd sign a new deal. I think we just know his quality is definitely up there, be it top 6 or whatever you want to say. England international now. He probably knows his level is higher than us. So, yeah, I think it's just one where we've taken a huge gamble to see what will happen, and we just got to wait and see. I can't see him going in January, really.
So yeah, well, that was going to be my next question. Could Newcastle United come back in January and tempt them? As you've just said there, you don't think that would happen. So that would lead you to the summer. His deal runs until 2026. So you would be in the final year of his contract come the summer. You see that's when Newcastle United have maybe got the best chance of bringing him up to Tyneside.
Yeah, for sure. I just can't. He got made captain this season. We're not doing well. If Newcastle, rightfully, Newcastle can go cheaper than they've offered in the summer now. We haven't done great with that. Our form's not been great. I still think Mark Guehi's been really good, despite having, I think our back five now have only played about 6 games together this season, so it's been very dysfunctional, and he's been doing well. So yeah, Newcastle can rightfully come in for a cheaper bid, but can you take that risk now in January? Really? Can you see a club like Palace going, we're going to sign another centre back in January? It's going to be inflated prices. They'll know the money we now have because of Newcastle possibly buying him. So personally, I can't see it. I may be proven wrong, but it'll be a hard one.
Yeah, the January market's always a difficult one to kind of manoeuvre. So maybe it is one that you look for in the summer. I mean, I did say on the podcast this week that I think Newcastle United will go back in January for Guehi, but be very kind of brutal about it. This is the price we're willing to offer. Accept it or not. If not, we'll walk away. I don't think Newcastle United will want to be getting involved in negotiations again, because I think they were a little bit stung by Parish. Of course, from your point of view, that's exactly what you want. You want your corner looking out for your best interest. Don't think Newcastle United were too impressed with what went down. Maybe led along the garden path slightly, and I think will make it actually quite an interesting atmosphere on Saturday, because I do think that will add to it, and there'll be a bit of feistiness, and there'll probably be a few chants about Parish as well, and there'll be plenty of eyes on Guehi, because in many ways it is another audition, for want of a better phrase. And he's split opinion as well. Not every Newcastle United fan is on board with it. They thought 65-70 million pounds was a lot of money to pay for him, and not every fan wanted to see that happen, and not every fan was disappointed that it didn't happen. So big afternoon for him. You say that he's been doing all right. I think everyone remembers that Luke Vardy goal that he got absolutely burned for, but other than that, I guess it's just football, isn't it? You do have mistakes in your game, but as a whole, he's been doing okay.
Yeah, and obviously Newcastle fans will they'll see the highlights and they'll see a certain goal and they'll maybe think Guehi's at full, and I've seen it a couple of times. And look, fair enough, it's a player who, in their eyes, was going to sign for them for 60 mil. There's going to be huge things in it, and all selling clubs inflate prices these days. It's just the way the market is. But I think he's been doing well overall. Games like Leicester, again, makeshift defence. Mark Guehi's had to play across the back 3 different games. He's had to play a CDM now against Fulham. So it's when this type of thing happens, you just don't get that fluidity that you want. And especially Schlober and Lacroix, they're 2 centre-backs now who are new to the club. So it was another new partnership forming, and I don't think that partnership's perfect yet. I think the Villa goal showed that, Lacroix pushed forward. Guehi was left centre-back. Lacroix pushes forward for one of their attacks, and that leaves us huge gaps. So I don't think it's highlighted as much as, look, the Guehi's made a mistake because he's the person closest to the ball. It can. I do think against Leicester, that definitely goes down as a Guehi mistake. But there's been other times where it's just that fluidity of the defence isn't there, and it does just add that pressure. But the fans will be caring. But Mark Guehi is someone who's just proven, even on international level, that he might make a mistake, but he'll just get himself back up, and that's all you can ask for a player. And it's so funny when this happens, isn't it? When 2 Premier League clubs, one wants a player that the other club has. Our club are going to say he's one of the best in the world, and your club are going to say, because he's bottom half table, which is completely fair from both sides. Football's a game of opinions, and there will be that heightened thing. But if Parish does want to sell in January, he's going to need a goal or 2 from Guehi, I think.
It's always funny, isn't it, when a deal doesn't come off and you see that the change put a shift in especially on those social media accounts, which have got a big following. It's gone from the best player ever to, he's rubbish anyway. We didn't want him. But how has he been as leader? Because you mentioned given that captaincy, it's not something that I kind of associated with Guehi. You've got all the other attributes, but as a leader, how has he been?
Well, I think he got the captaincy on occasions in his first season with us, and he was only 22. He's only 24 years old. I do think people forget how young he actually is. So to get that full role was a huge message, and I do think our team lacks leaders. Anderson was a huge leader. We haven't had that, that aggressive captain over the years, and you're not going to see that in Mark Guehi. But I do think you see he's the one. If heads are down, he will go picking them up. there are definitely going to be leadership traits that he still needs to learn for sure because he is so young at it. But yeah, I'm very happy he's got the captaincy, and I think everyone can agree that the way he speaks post games is very, very good, and you can see he's got them qualities in him.
There's an extra 5 or 6 million on him then because he's your captain. Yeah, Steve Parish, he's not daft, is he?
Maybe that's why I did it. Maybe that's why I did it.
Wouldn't surprise us at all. Talk to me then about the danger man. Obviously, we mentioned the exit of Michael Olise, who I'm pretty sure you would have chosen the last couple of times you've been on this podcast. So, who stepped up? Mateta hasn't quite had the goal scoring form he found towards the end of last season. So, who is the danger man for Palace?
It just depends who is starting, because I think Glasner's literally said just before this that Eze and Nketiah will be in the squad. To me, that sounds like they're not going to start. We don't have that creator, in the squad, so it's probably going to be Ismaila Sarr for his pace. If he can do a game like Villa again, his pace on the ball and the way he can dribble on the ball, that can add stuff. Mateta's still a threat. Mateta's always been someone who's lethal in that 12-yard box. He needs that service. So if he gets it, he can definitely score. So yeah, that probably Mateta and Sarr. But yeah, I'm coming into this game a bit like, I'm not too sure who that man who's going to fully frighten Newcastle in our attack is going to be.
Well, we'll definitely take that. What's the main weakness that Newcastle can exploit on Saturday?
I don't know. It's just because obviously we're 19th at the moment, so there has been weaknesses, but I can't really pinpoint it because it has just been like the moments. Like the defense is clearly not perfect, so they're definitely going to capitalize on that. Set pieces maybe as well could be an issue, and if you guys do counter attack, you are lethal at that. So there'll be moments if our midfield's not perfect. Decore's still just coming back from injury. Lerma just came back from injury. If we do high press and it doesn't come through because Newcastle can easily get out of that with the players they've got on the ball, then that will be a huge issue for us.
And what about your main strength that if you think Eddie Howe will be looking at and thinking that's where they can hurt us?
I don't know if you remember that Newcastle game we had, but Hughes in that game was like a pressing machine. Really terrorized when you guys had the ball. So I think it's just going to be that. They know we're going to be at home. They know we're going to try and get them moments. And let's say one of these presses, it sounds like I'm saying we do it the whole game. It's impossible to do that. But let's say we do press on one of these occasions and you pass the ball out by accident or something. That's going to be something that just adds that pressure that Eddie Howe just doesn't need.
Well, there we go. It's definitely something to watch. And from a Newcastle United point of view, is there a certain player that you're fearing more than anyone else?
Obviously, Isaac can do everything when he's at his best. He's terrifying. I heard Joe Linton might be back, so I just think he's such a good player at what he actually does. So he always worries me at the moment. I think when he's not playing, he is a missing cog. So they'd be the ones I'm definitely worried about. And as I say, but Gordon can do anything on his day as well, especially on the counter attack. So you've got some very good attackers. You
mentioned quite a few players there who probably just need to see step up, and if they do so, then Newcastle United should be onto something. But they've been very inconsistent. Obviously, a great win over Arsenal, great win over Forest, but then going to that West Ham game, and nearly everybody, other than maybe Lewis Hall and Tino Livramento, were very, very disappointing. So we have to see them step up against these teams like Palace. But I'm just going to read you off some stats before I get your score prediction in, because stats aren't great for Newcastle. Suffered 13 defeats in 25 Premier League away fixtures since the beginning of last season, which obviously plays into your hands. But only Newcastle and Liverpool have yet to drop a point from winning positions this season. Newcastle have won each of the last 10 league matches in which they have taken the league. So we'll definitely be taking that. Looks like the danger man is Mateta. He scored 14 goals in 13 Premier League home games under Glasner, which is a fantastic record. Head to head, it'll be if Palace win, it will be the first time they've won successive league games against Newcastle. Since 1972 season. So only for the second time since one of 3 from the early 70s. And Newcastle's solitary Premier League away victory against Crystal Palace in the past 9 attempts. Why am I reading this out? I don't even know. It was 2-0 on the 27th of November 2020. Drawn 5, lost 3. I wish I hadn't read that last one out, actually. I knew it was bad, but I didn't.
That's crazy because I remember that game. I think it was during lockdown, that 2-0 loss, but I feel like I don't. Obviously, the stats are right, but it just doesn't feel like Newcastle have had that bad a run against us lately at Selhurst. But
See,
crazy.
for me, it does though. We were talking about this on Monday against West Ham. Like the feeling's a little bit different, but then you see the stats. Oh, okay. But yeah, no, Selhurst Park is always a ground I feel Newcastle United going to. There's just the atmosphere, and it just seems to be as well like Crystal Palace are a bit of a thorn in Newcastle's side, especially away from home. But before I get your score prediction, just a reminder to our listeners and our viewers, this episode is brought to you by NORD VPN. If you want to keep yourself safe, especially when you're using public Wi-Fi, hit up the link in our podcast description box where you can get a very special discounted offer. No risk with NORD VPN, as you've got a guarantee 30-day money-back guarantee. You'll get an extra few months on your 2-year plan by clicking that link in the podcast description box. Thank you to NORD for supporting the podcast. Much appreciated as always. Luke, come on then. How's this one going to go?
I think I'm going to just do like a boring 1-1. I think there'll be some nerves from both sides. And sometimes, yes, I know both sides desperately need to win, but there will be that feeling of just kind of see how long you can last.
Well, I've gone for 1-1, but I mean, what are Palace expecting, do you think? You as a fan, what are you expecting on Saturday from like this game? Is it a game you look at and think Newcastle are vulnerable against sides fighting for their lives? Or is it, Newcastle United are still a very good team and that you give Isaac a chance, he'll score? Or is it, they create chances, but they can't score goals? Like, I'm just trying to get into like the kind of your head and what are you thinking about it?
Well, I think if you're a club like Palace, every home game apart from let's say the big six, you have to in the back of your head, you're mentally thinking you've got to try and give it a go. You've got to try and get the wins. The home games against these clubs are the most important. But Newcastle are a bit of an unknown entity. They could be really good. They could be really bad. They could be in the middle. So yeah, I'm going into this wanting a win, especially with the position we are in the table, but mindfully respectful of some of the players you've got on show, because some of them definitely, I know they haven't been at their best, but they can battle top level Premier League. So,
well, fingers crossed from our point of view, Newcastle can get back to winning ways and pick up a much needed win, because the table is just so congested down, well, kind of between, I think it's about 3rd and 11th. It's about a few points that separate the teams. I'm just going to have a quick look and see what would happen if Palace, heaven forbid, would win. So what you're on 8 points at the moment, it would take you to 11 points. And then, you're kind of nearly in the mix for the rest of the league table. It's so tight. It's unbelievable. I mean,
yeah, we got Ipswich away next. So I think there'll be nerves in this game where if we don't play well against Newcastle, there'll be full-on worries coming up against Ipswich away on a Tuesday night. So, stressful.
yes, well, fingers crossed. Well, I know I don't want to be nasty, but I want to put you in that position, to be quite honest, Luke. So I hope you are feeling a little bit worse for wear come the kickoff against Ipswich. But thank you very much for coming on to the podcast. It is much appreciated as always. To you guys watching and listening, please hit the like button, share the pod as well. Head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle United news, including live coverage of this game through our dedicated match day live blog. It's not on TV, unfortunately, so you will have to follow it through our live blog. We'll bring you kick-by-kick action with our colleagues down there. So thank you, as always, for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys very soon.